In this video, we will learn about assembling a very basic Intel build or Intel PC. For that, I'm using Zotac 1050 Ti graphics card and Gigabyte H110 MS2 1151 socket-based motherboard, i3-10100 processor. For the power supply unit, I am using Antec Atom V550, that is a 550 watt power supply. For the heatsink, I am using Ant Esports ICE C612 heatsink. Then I am using 8 GB RAM stick, which is clocked at 2400 MHz. So I'm using 2 RAM stick. So in total I'm using 16 GB of RAM. For the storage I'm using SSD, which is a 240 GB, sorry, it's a 120 GB SATA SSD, and then I'm using a 500 GB normal hard disk drive. Then I'm using a Cooler Master Gel regular thermal paste. For the cabinet, I'm using Antec Esports 120 AG and it is a mid-tower case. So now let's start the assembly process. Now this is the motherboard and this is the slot where we need to place the CPU. Now in order to place the CPU, we need to match this triangle with the triangle that is present on the CPU. So we can see that on the CPU, on this corner, there is a triangle. Before applying the thermal compound on the CPU, I'm going to fix this base plate of the heatsink on the motherboard. Now since the heatsink bracket is fixed on the motherboard, we are going to apply some thermal paste on the CPU. So this is my Cooler Master thermal paste and this is how I'm going to apply this on the CPU. So this is the third-party heatsink that I'm using and it's Ant Esports heatsink. But before placing it on the CPU, we need to make sure that we remove this sticker. So we need to remove the sticker first. And now you can see that the copper pipes are exposed. So now we can place this over the CPU. Now this is the correct placement of the heatsink, in which you can see that the fan of the heatsink is against the RAM slots. So you can see this is the heatsink, these are the fan, and this is the RAM slot. It should be like this. Now once we place the heatsink in place, we need to connect this CPU fan cable to the CPU fan header. So this is how we can connect it. Yep. So now the CPU fan cable is connected to the motherboard. So this CPU fan cable is used to rotate this heatsink fan. Now before placing the motherboard on the cabinet, we are going to fix these RAM sticks on the motherboard. So let me focus on the motherboard, and you can see that these two slots are the RAM slot. So this is one RAM slot and this is the other RAM slot. Now it's time to place the motherboard on the cabinet, because you can see that I've already fixed the heatsink and RAM as well as the CMOS battery on the motherboard. So it's perfect time to place this on the cabinet. I have fixed the motherboard inside the cabinet. And I have also connected the power supply unit with the motherboard. So this is the main power cable, and these are the SATA cables, and I covered the SATA cables with tube. You can see that I fixed SMPS here, and the orientation is like the fan is facing down. So right now these cables are messy. This is the back plate. So the next thing I'll do is I'll fit the graphics card in the graphics card slot, that is the PCI Express slot, which is right here. And then I'll try to route the cables. I'll also connect all the front I/O connectors. So the Intel build is complete now. However, before closing the cabinet, I want to show all the connections that I did. So this portion of the motherboard, let me focus on it. This portion of the motherboard consists of all the pins for the cabinet, like the reset pin and the hard disk indicator pin, as well as the power on switch pin. So all are connected here, and I have covered the wires with the help of these tubes. This is the front USB pin, and this one is the front audio jack pin. This is the graphics card, which is connected to the PCI Express slot. And this one is for front USB. Below this is the SATA pin, which is used to connect the solid state drive and the normal hard disk drive. So this is how it looks now. I tried to manage the wiring. So most of the wires that comes from the SMPS or the power supply unit is on the back side of the CPU. Sorry, the back side of the cabinet. Because this portion is not exposed, so I'll put the lid on it, and it's going to cover all the messy cables. We have successfully assembled the Intel machine, and now it's time to test it. So I think it's looking gorgeous. However, let's just try to check how it works. So basically I built this system for 1080p video editing, as well as gaming, as well as for animation. So let's check how it performs in Grand Theft Auto 5. So the resolution is set to 1080p and almost all the settings, you can see that the texture quality, shader quality, shadow quality, everything is at very high. And let's just try to check how much FPS we can get at 1080p. Now we are running the benchmark test and let's check the performance. Oh god, we are getting more than 60 frames per second. And mind it's an i3 machine, it's not i7. It's 75, 76, 81, oh god. It's more than 60 FPS. So it's more than my expectation. You can easily do 1080p gaming in this. So this is all about my new PC. And I hope you all learned a lot with this build. Please share and subscribe my channel if you like this video. To subscribe my channel and to get future notification, click on subscribe and then click on the bell icon.